Right now, as you watch this video, something extraordinary is happening inside your skull. Light hits your retina, electrical signals race through your optic nerve, and somewhere in the swirling activity of 100 billion neurons, something appears. A picture, a feeling, an experience. You are not just processing information, you are experiencing it. That simple fact that there is something it is like to be you might be the deepest mystery in science. This is the hard problem of consciousness.
And by the end of this video, you will understand why some of the smartest people on the planet think we may never fully solve it. What is consciousness? Let's start simple. What do we even mean by consciousness? In everyday language, consciousness is just being awake and aware, as opposed to asleep or in a coma. But philosophers use the word in a deeper sense. They mean subjective experience itself, the redness of red, the sting of pain, the taste of coffee, the feeling of being you, looking out at the world from behind your own eyes.
The easy problems. To understand why consciousness is so puzzling, we need to separate it into two different kinds of problems. The philosopher David Chalmers, who coined the term the hard problem in 1995, called the first group the easy problems. Now, easy does not mean simple. These are problems neuroscience is already equipped to tackle, even if the details take decades. How does the brain integrate information from different senses? How do we focus attention on one thing and ignore another? How does the brain store memories? How do we wake and fall asleep? These are all questions about function, what the brain does and how. We can, in principle, map every neuron firing, every chemical releasing, every circuit activating, and explain these processes mechanically, much like explaining a car engine.
But then there is the hard problem, and it is a completely different beast. Even after you have mapped every neuron, traced every signal, and explained every function the brain performs, one question remains unanswered. Why does any of this feel like anything at all? Why isn't all that information processing happening in the dark with no inner experience accompanying it? You could imagine a being that does everything a conscious person does, talks, reacts to pain, recoils from danger, says ouch when stuck with a pin, but has no inner experience whatsoever. No one is home. Philosophers call this hypothetical creature a philosophical zombie. A P-zombie would be physically identical to you, behaving exactly as you do, yet lacking any subjective experience. The lights are on, but nobody is inside looking out. The fact that we can even coherently imagine such a being, even if it does not actually exist, suggests consciousness is not simply identical to physical brain processes. There seems to be an extra ingredient, and that is what the hard problem asks us to explain. Why it's so hard? Here is the deep difficulty. Science explains things by describing structure and function, how parts relate to each other, and what a system does. That works beautifully for almost everything in the universe: galaxies, chemical reactions, even complex biological systems like digestion. But subjective experience does not seem to be a matter of structure or function at all. Knowing exactly how neurons fire when you see red does not, by itself, explain why seeing red feels like anything. You could know every physical fact about the brain and still not know what red looks like from the inside, unless you have experienced it. This is sometimes illustrated with a thought experiment called Mary's Room, proposed by philosopher Frank Jackson. Imagine Mary, a brilliant neuroscientist who has lived her entire life in a black and white room. She knows everything there is to know physically about color vision, every wavelength, every neural pathway, every fact in the textbooks. But she has never seen color.
One day, she steps outside and sees a red apple for the first time. Does she learn something new?
Many people's intuition is yes, she does. She learns what red actually looks like. If that is true, it suggests physical facts alone do not capture everything there is to know about consciousness. There is something extra, the experience itself, that no third-person description can fully capture.
Major theories. So how do thinkers try to solve or dissolve this puzzle? There are several major approaches. Materialists argue consciousness simply is a physical process, and our sense of a hard problem is really a kind of cognitive illusion. Philosopher Daniel Dennett argued that once we fully explain all the functions of the brain, there is no further mystery left over. Dualists, following René Descartes, argue the opposite, that consciousness is fundamentally non-physical, a different kind of substance entirely, interacting with the brain but not reducible to it. Then there are panpsychists, who take a strikingly different route, suggesting that consciousness, in some basic form, might be a fundamental feature of the universe, present even in simple particles, with complex consciousness emerging when matter is organized in sufficiently complex ways. And in neuroscience, integrated information theory proposes that consciousness arises from a system's capacity to integrate information in a unified way, while global workspace theory suggests consciousness emerges when information becomes broadly available across brain processes at once, like a spotlight broadcasting to a waiting stage.
Why it matters. This is not just an abstract puzzle. It has real consequences. As artificial intelligence grows more sophisticated, we're forced to ask, could a machine ever truly be conscious? Or will it only simulate the outward signs of experience without anything going on inside? The question matters for animal welfare too, since if a fish or an insect has subjective experience, that changes how we ought to treat it. It matters in medicine too, when doctors must judge whether a patient retains any awareness.
Decades after Chalmers named it, the hard problem remains unsolved. Maybe future science will crack it open. Maybe it is the wrong question entirely. Or maybe it marks a genuine limit on what science, built to explain structure and function, can ever tell us about the inner light of experience. Either way, the mystery sits at the center of what it means to be you. Right now, hearing this voice, something is happening inside your mind that no equation has managed to explain. The screen in front of you is just glass and light, but behind your eyes, that glass and light has become an experience. That, perhaps, is the strangest fact in the universe. Thanks for watching. If this made you think differently about your own mind, consider subscribing for more explorations into philosophy, science, and the biggest questions we still cannot answer.